Hi! Welcome to this part of my review featuring the Bloodlines and Black Magic core rulebook. If you haven't seen the other parts of this review, please check out the playlist in the description below. Bloodlines and Black Magic is an experience of occult modern adventures. This time we are going to talk about the Bloodlines. This could be considered the races of this role-playing game. However, these bloodlines are not exclusive to a particular ethnicity or culture. They do have some grips in certain zones of the setting, but almost anyone could be of any bloodline. Now, let's talk about the background of this mysterious blood current. Before you can fully understand the larger impact the various bloodline families and lineages have on the world, you need to understand the power many of them wield through their obscurity, tucked safely behind the walls of gated communities and remote, private retreats. Because while Hollywood loves to paint the global elite as rich playboys or stern, heartless industrialists, and many of them are, a great number of these global power players are much more and much less than human. While the magically gifted make up only 1% of our planet's population, they account for a surprisingly large fraction of the most powerful individuals acting on the world stage. Of course, most blooded are not rich. Instead, most spiritually touched individuals live simple pedestrian lives, hiding in plain sight. When you combine this obscurity with the relative minority, it becomes easy for even the most skeptical individuals to understand how these small, invisible groups manage so much with what appears to be so little. Because while a great deal of them live and work in these hidden worlds, the power they can deploy pales in comparison to that which the sovereigns and their servants can deploy, and less so when one considers the power that the archons or goetic spirits wield. So while a small percentage of people possess the aptitude to understand these larger cosmological mysteries, only about 0.01% of the global population even considers the proposition, leaving a larger 99.99% of us chasing Plato's shadows. The totality of our lives spent focused on illusions, deceptions, and other disinformation, which is just how Hollywood likes it. While the various bloodline families maintain a tight grip on the domains they control, a larger movement, a sense of purpose among those disenfranchised for far too long has begun. Here and there, pockets of people are beginning to see the larger effects of this control. Many of them have started to fight back. So basically, when you play this role-playing game, your player character could be a member of these bloodlines, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you belong to the rich and the corrupt elite. It means that you could represent the resistance, and you can also play as a normal human. There are some perks when you do that, although the members of the bloodline do have an advantage because of their extraordinary abilities. Although it is also possible for a normal human to acquire supernatural bloodline powers. In these heated moments of unity, humanity reminds its most privileged members, it's wealthy, it's powerful, it's entitled, that they too are vulnerable. Today, much of humanity remains tense, on edge. Few humans are able to explain the growing sense of malaise and social dissonance they feel. In Bloodlines and Black Magic, there is a simple premise. Humans possess a special quality, a fiery passion that drives them to change and evolve. This drive often pushes them into the invisible world, whether they like it or not. When this happens, most humans react in a number of fairly predictable ways. Most humans will look for confirmation from friends or authority figures, spinning off into any number of cults, conspiracy collectives, or other groups focused on a particular truth these individuals cannot ignore. Others will self-isolate and detach from society altogether, going so far as to fake their deaths to protect those they love. A rare few humans, 1 in every 7 or so, who discover the invisible world will choose to engage it, playing with it with the same sense of pleasure and need they did in the mundane world, at least before everything changed. While a great number of the people who discover the invisible world do so when they activate Pierce the Veil for the first time, this event often corresponds with the biological changes that accompany discovering their bloodline abilities. In Bloodlines and Black Magic, Individuals who begin to practice a magical art often discover the invisible world, as well as the very nature of their practice, slowly tearing down the veil and allowing them to see the greater, often scarier, truths beyond. These individuals, even without the magic their blood drives, possess powers that make them far more than they initially seem. Each of the world's 7 bloodlines represents a hero's connection to the mythic parts of the universe, connecting them to both the mundane and invisible worlds through their blood. While members of each of these bloodlines may not know one another, most individuals born into one of these bloodlines will exhibit personality traits and behaviors that are scarily similar, often attracting and repelling them in kind. Those lucky enough to be born into one of the bloodline lineages often learn about these important relationships early on in life, empowering them to act in far more mature and intelligent ways in the mundane world and in the invisible worlds. In future parts of this review, I am going to talk about the different bloodlines in more detail, but now let's take a cursory look at them. There is the dragon-blooded bloodline. This particular lineage possesses a connection to the eternal dragon in all its forms, whether as the mother of monsters, the Ouroboros, as the world serpent, or as any hundred of other mythical dragons. Members of this bloodline are often distant, cold, and aloof. These individuals measure every word and action very carefully. We have the dream-blooded. This bloodline's connection to the dreaming realms, which most modern occultists understand is a little more than another name for the astral plane, provides them with an insight into humanity's understanding of the arts in all their forms, with members displaying passions and inspirations that leave others wondering who dreams up these things. We have the Fae-blooded. The bloodline's connection to the Fae, and through them, to the primordial parts of the natural world, have long defined them. This connection to the natural world manifests in countless ways in the Fae-blooded individuals, but all display both a deep and emotional connection to nature and the creatures living within it. We have the Infernal-blooded. This bloodline's connection to the infernal realms manifests in them as a passion for power, position, and authority. Individuals born with infernal blood always compete with a strangely destructive need to win. Strong, smart, and passionate, members of this bloodline tend to dominate their personal relationships. We have the Jinn-blooded. This bloodline's connection to the vast, open spaces of the world manifests in the spirit of every traveler and great explorer. Born with strong connections to the ancient world, individuals born into this bloodline have long populated the Fertile Crescent, although few remains here. While some outsiders are tempted to make assumptions about the Jinn-blooded, one thing remains true: their strong connections to the Jinn. We have the Seraphic-blooded. This bloodline possesses a connection to the celestial realms that most occultists associate with the Archons, the great, powerful angelic beings who rule in the stead of the first. Members of this bloodline possess a drive towards law, justice, and order in the universe. We have the Shadow-blooded. This bloodline's connection to shadows, darkness, and entropy manifests in ways others describe as creepy, odd, strange, or unnerving. While not inherently evil, shadow-blooded individuals who embrace their darker sides find connecting to and using the stuff of the void incredibly easy. A character's bloodline can impact every aspect of their life. First, it grants them access to that bloodline's ability, unlocking a pool of distinct powers from which the player may select, unless a special ability or other rule dictates that the player can do otherwise. Player characters may select 2 abilities from this pool at character creation. These choices help the player customize the character so they can showcase traits they feel best represent their character concept. As characters grow and level up, they can elect to attune with their bloodline abilities, allowing them to unlock even greater powers. Secondly, the player's choice connects the character to the invisible world by creating relationships to others based on that blood. For individuals born to specific bloodline families, houses, or lineages, this social impact is even more pronounced. Many members of these bloodline lineages begin their lives blanketed in privilege and wealth, with very few of their desires out of reach. This choice connects the player character to to the Bloodlines' larger, longer history and all the consequences of the choices its various houses and families made. Many player characters inherit foes, enemies, and darker legacies they had no hand in creating. How a game master and a player choose to explore these relationships is entirely up to them, but both should consider these families as larger, living organizations with goals, dreams, and hopes for the invisible world. The character gains extra vitality through this connection to their blood. When a character awakens to the power of their blood, they gain a small number of bonus hit points designed to represent this newfound vitality. Finally, the player character's blood gives them insight into their compulsions towards themes, ideas, or beliefs. These compulsions, of course, are entirely under the player character's control, and when they finally come to understand them, player characters should have an opportunity to lessen their impact. Now let's talk about lineages, families, and magical houses. While each of the 7 bloodlines are distinct in their connection to the invisible world, they are not socially or culturally unified. Instead, each bloodline is broken down into lineages, and within those, there are houses and individual families. Each lineage is a close confederation of bloodline families and houses, all of whom share a common bloodline and who commonly follow a single powerful sovereign in the invisible world. These lineages span centuries, with some of the oldest among them dating themselves to the 4th century, although not without some debate. Because such lineages do span centuries, many of them have set plans into motion that have taken them decades, sometimes centuries, to bring to fruition. Let's talk a bit about each of the lineages. We have the Anansi skin. This lineage has been prevalent in sub-Saharan Africa for the past 500 years, though its origin goes back to the dawn of humanity. Descended from the powerful Fae who inspired the legends of the spider god Anansi, this folk carry on the traditions of their folk hero ancestor, taking the roles of storytellers, tricksters, and dispensers of wisdom. This lineage's power always skips a generation, arranging the awakened of the family in a scattered web of grandparents and cousins interwoven with normal parents and children who keep them somewhat tethered to mundane humanity. Then we have the Bodiabos. This nascent lineage has expanded considerably over the last century, filling the sprawling favelas surrounding the ultra-dense cityscape of Rio de Sangue, Brazil. What began with a silver-tongued medicine man whispering strange prayers as he healed the city's poor has become a prevalent apocalypse cult, commanding the devotion of thousands. Prominent family members include Catarina Bodiabos, soul-sucking supermodel, and the fearsome Diogo Heinrich Bodiabos, mesmerizing cult master and deathless patriarch of the line. We also have the Druaga. This small but well-connected lineage has ties that extend throughout Europe, China, and into parts of Eastern North Africa, although the latter is primarily due to their proximity more than anything else. Prolific and ancient, this lineage operates out of Albania, although it actively monitors its interests in both Greece and Macedonia, where it maintains significant financial and political weight. Having suffered under communism until the early 1990s, the Druaga are fierce lovers of freedom and often outspoken when it comes to zealots of any stripe. Although other lineages have challenged the very idea, the Druaga claim to have an extensive and accurate family tree that goes all the way back into the 3rd century. Then we have the Eyes of Nyx. Originating as a cult of Nyx, primordial mother of gods and personification of night, this lineage spreads over millennia from ancient Greece to every corner of the globe. Since Plato's time, these brooding philosophers and occult scholars have pursued hidden knowledge, relentlessly seeking the higher truths behind the shadows which dance before our eyes. Two of the last known members were Hitomi Kage, supernatural super hacker of the dark web, and John Doe, resurrected seer of the void between the stars. Nowadays, with their members missing and their work abandoned, all that remains of the bloodline are sleeping neophytes, orphaned and grasping for clues in abandoned libraries and empty tombs. Then we have the Khufu. This lineage has quietly persisted in the cities and deserts of North Africa since originating in ancient Egypt in the 26th century before Common Era. This priestly order believes their progenitor, the mighty pharaoh Khufu, joined with a spirit from beyond the stars, which infused Khufu's body, soul, and personal possessions with power everlasting. The power of Khufu's blood only awakens in his descendants if they commune with one of his relics, usually during a solemn ritual, but sometimes in a fateful encounter with a strange object discovered in a museum, basement, or forgotten tomb. Then we have the Mura Mura. The Mura Mura's ancient roots begin with the Aboriginal peoples of Central Australia, though in post-colonial centuries the lineage has expanded into a diverse assortment of ethnicities across the continent. Descendants are always born with the Mura Mura's telltale eyes, which wax milky white when rousing the blood's power. Prominent members of the bloodline include All Song Yemba, bull-roaring spirit summoner of the deep outback, and the much prophesied Charlotte Moore, the psychic child prodigy. Then we have Las Serpientes. This lineage has fluctuated in prominence throughout South America for centuries, with a precipitous rise to widespread power during the past 50 years. Descended from an anaconda-like river dragon, one of the shape-shifting serpent gods of the Amazon River basin, the lineage originated in the deepest, darkest jungle. Prominent family members include Don Tiago Mboa, a zombie racing cartel boss, and his daughter Malinda Mboa Crow, the star-crossed assassin whose infernal marriage is about to ignite the entire hemisphere. We also have Shaitan's Own. Transported to Australia in the early 19th century, this freebooting lineage rose from common charlatans to mystical merchant princes in a single generation, all thanks to an unholy union with a nefarious noble Shaitan, one of the most terrible wish twisters ever to crawl dark and whispering from the lamp. Despite their treacherous history, or perhaps because of it, this organization possesses a miraculous stockpile of magical items and occult relics, but Kaivat Emtor, nothing they sell is quite what it seems, or if it is, you probably should not want it. Then we have the Shuanan. This lineage's population has revived in just the past century, their power passed not only by genetic heritage, but bolstered through adoptees, young human lives saved by the Fae. Stories abound of infants kidnapped by the Fae and returned to the mundane world as adolescents, forever changed. Prominent family members include Ailsa Sionan, the family's thorny matriarch, and Calm Sionan, grizzled captain of the North Sea anti-whaling vessel, Map's Fist. Then we have the Sin Eaters. All but erased from the historical record, this lineage has appeared irregularly for 2,000 years, repeatedly destroyed in catastrophe only to reappear elsewhere generations later. The origin of a Sin Eater is always miraculous in some respect: a virginal birth, a pregnancy carried despite incredible adversity, or a newborn discovered abandoned yet perfectly healthy in impossible circumstances. Any current members must live in secret, but the last two well-known members of this bloodline were Lucy LeVay, healer of heretics and unsung martyr of the Great Chicago Fire, and Kiyoshi Shimoda, forbidden ritualist and first shadow of Hiroshima. Now, with all of this, you could be thinking that perhaps playing as a normal human is not viable. But let me talk about some of the things that you obtain when you play as a regular human being. You get a bonus to any one ability score of your choice. You also obtain extra hit points. You gain proficiency in 2 skills of your choosing, and you begin play with a feat, although this feat cannot give you a bloodline ability, power, or trait. A character who lacks a bloodline begins play with a muted, dull gray aura that marks them as a simple mortal. Heroes who practice magic, who can cast spells, or who interact a great deal with the supernatural world may still develop a more colorful aura over time. Likewise, if you gain a bloodline later, your aura will also match this change. You will no longer appear to be a mortal in the invisible world. Then we have the Tianlong dynasty. This ancient and prolific lineage permeates Eastern Asia, from the snow-capped Himalayas to the loneliest Japanese islands. Descended from the legendary celestial dragon emperors, the Tianlong carry a legacy that demands excellence and self-mastery above all things. Prominent members of the dynasty include Tianlong Fan, mind-rending monk of the Invisible Army, and Tommy Lung, playboy action star and black market miracle worker. We also have Suleiman's court. This lineage has been well established in Western Asia for 1400 years. It descends the proud line of a queenly Marid who claimed a seat on King Solomon's court and consorted with the legendary ruler. Prominent members of the lineage include the Honorable Dawood al-Mullah, chief ambassador to the courts of the Jinn, and the Brass Sheikh, renegade monster slayer and rumored thief of the storied ring of Andalib. Now, concerning the houses, there are many of them. The various houses that populate the invisible world control nearly all its specialized interests, focusing on everything from security to politics to occult research. Each house works under the banner, or heraldry in parts of Europe, of its matron or patron, living and working under their careful guidance and foresight towards ends only their lineage and sovereign fully grasp. I'm going to give you some of the details concerning a few of the houses because there are many. We have House Black, a strange mixture of dragon-blooded, dream-blooded, and seraphic-blooded humans with a draw to the forbidden parts of the universe. This house specializes in the spaces between the stars and celestial bodies upon which others fixate. We have House Celeste. This house has long watched over the green places of the world, working through the difficult and seemingly endless paperwork associated with safeguarding the environment, reclaiming natural spaces, and preserving the most important parts of nature for future generations. There's also House Vyrd. Born in Europe in the late 13th century, this house focuses on using their bloodline abilities to map out the history of the invisible and mundane worlds as they happen, weaving both together into a comprehensive narrative any occultist or magician could easily understand. Then we have the families. The various families who work and rule the invisible world represent the largest, most diverse groups of people in the invisible world. Composed entirely of regional, extended families who display a natural tendency towards birthing blooded children, these magical families and clans often develop specific, localized understanding of the invisible world. Let me talk a bit about some of them, because there are also many. We have the Adams family. One of America's oldest families, the Adams family, maintains several large domains inside New England and along the East Coast. While a majority of the family seeks power for its sake alone, outsiders claim the family has long-standing ties with several infernal spirits of the goetic kind. We have the Draco family. Said to speak with serpents before they speak their parents' native tongues, members of this small, secretive clan are reputed to be powerful players in the secret world, operating as proxies for the Druaga lineage in all of their European affairs in northern and central Africa. Then we have the Murray family. This dream-blooded family lives and operates out of the United Kingdom, concerned with the secret wars of some of the larger families established in Europe in the 13th and 14th centuries. The Murray family, or clan in some countries, has a long-standing reputation for safeguarding those blooded who cannot defend themselves. This family has many ties to America as well. Then we have details on when you are born into the blood. In Bloodlines and Black Magic, how someone inherits or discovers the power inherent in their blood is entirely unique. While a character's arcana does a good job of explaining this momentous event, scholars in the invisible world have noted that there are 7 ways someone gains this kind of power. Perhaps the power passed through your lineage. This is quite common within the uncommon. Perhaps the power passed through murder. Maybe the power was obtained through love. Or maybe through a wondrous item. You could also obtain the power through saving a life. Or maybe by taking up a mantle. Or perhaps it is taken by alignment. And this concludes this part of the review for today. As you can see, this is very exciting. You can choose to play as a normal human, or as a human with some traits that are supernatural, tied to very ancient and magical sources. And you can also choose your affiliation with all of those lineages and houses and families, all sorts of groups and organizations. You can belong to any one of them, or perhaps act as an outsider. It all depends on the sort of campaign that you are running. And I really love how they implement these bloodlines. In the next parts of this review, I am going to talk about each of these specific bloodlines with their powers, bonuses to attributes, etc. I also think that the bloodlines are a great representation of real-world occult philosophy, because for example, if you examine many of the families in Hollywood and politics and the like, there are many that have the Rh negative bloodline traits. And this is very rare, maybe some of you do not know, but if you are Rh negative, you are within the 10 to 15% of the world population, and supposedly they have strange powers, abilities, virtues. Some of them are said to be born from angels, from fairies, from elementals. There are all sorts of stories, and you have some strange traits to that. You could look up here in YouTube or other sources, and you will find some very peculiar things. It is said that the most horrifying villains, that is, people you would find in Hollywood and in politics, belong to this sort of bloodline, but also the greatest heroes, such as, they say, Cuchulainn, Gilgamesh, Hercules, all of those were supposedly gifted with the Rh negative trait. But, like in many things in occult philosophy, it's all up to you to find out the truth about this. Well, thanks for watching this part of the review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you and see you later.